Greetings, mortals. Welcome to another session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell. I'm Diva, your...
When are you gonna review the Tim Burton Sweeney Todd movie?
Bah! What the...
Come on, everyone's been asking for it for ages. We want to see Johnny Depp's weird, skunky hairstyle roasted.
Look who's talking. Anyway, this is my court, and I have no intention of...
But you're always talking about how Helena Bonham Carter is miscast as Mrs. Lovett, and there's no way that you can justify the way they chopped up the score like...
Guys! Look, I see what you're getting at, but the fact is, I don't think Sweeney Todd is that bad of a movie. I mean it. Does it have flaws? Absolutely. Is it inferior to its source material, which is one of the greatest scores written by Stephen Sondheim and consequently one of the greatest musicals of all time? Goes without saying. But in spite of all that, I think it kind of works on its own terms. Certainly I'd take it any day over Mamma Mia or, Lucifer forbid, anything in the High School Musical series. I appreciate the fact that there are a lot of people out there who want to see this movie raked over the coals, but frankly, I think there are other subjects far more deserving of punishment.
Well, screw that! We've been waiting 4 years! We want to see some Sweeney Todd, goddammit!
Look...
Sweeney!
All right! Yeesh, you put a few videos on the internet and suddenly everybody is up in your horns about everything. Fine. As much as it pains me to say it, let's examine the case of Sweeney Todd. The movie opens with titles that look like the credits from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory hit adolescence and are going through a moody goth phase. As you can hear, we're stuck with an instrumental version of the Ballad of Sweeney Todd, which doesn't sit right with me, and not just because I consider it the best opening number ever. An earlier draft of the script did include the ballad, which was to be sung in a graveyard by the ghosts of Sweeney's victims, led by none other than Anthony Stewart Head and Christopher fucking Lee. I can only assume the reason this idea was rejected is because the sheer awesomeness of it would have caused the universe to implode. But if you've ever wondered why Head is in the movie for like 5 seconds, that's why. On the other hand, the Ballad of Sweeney Todd is a heavily theatrical device, as are its numerous reprises throughout the show, and one which would be very difficult to translate effectively to film. So even though I'm disappointed, I do understand the logic behind this particular decision. I'm still counting it as a sin, though. We open on a grim, bleak London day with a grim, bleak ship heading into port. On it are the not-so-grim and bleak Sailor Anthony Hope and the extremely grim and bleak Sweeney Todd.
There's a hole in the world like a great black pit, and the vermin of the world inhabit it, and its morals aren't worth what a pig could spit, and it goes by the name of London.
Controversial opinion time. Despite sounding kind of like Jack Sparrow's manically depressed cousin, I don't hate Johnny Depp's voice in this. It's not George Hearn level or anything, but it doesn't reach the painful depths of Gerard Butler or Pierce Brosnan, or even the awkwardly miscast level of Russell Crowe. And he does act the part reasonably well, all morose and creepy with bursts of vindictive rage, so that helps. Despite being exposed to an extraordinary amount of moody ranting, Anthony doesn't feel the need to sneak off in the opposite direction, so he gets a brief overview of Sweeney's backstory. He once had a wife, but Snape had the hots for her, so he sent Wormtail to arrest Sweeney on false charges and ship him off to a penal colony for 15 years, and now he's escaped and back in town and reasonably sore about all that. But before he does anything, he needs to find out what's been going on during his long absence. Say what you will about Tim Burton's signature style, it is remarkably well suited for this particular musical, enough to earn a saving grace. It's a monochromatic industrial nightmare that's atmospheric, surreal, and unsettling. The splashes of color that do show up, like Mrs. Lovett's garishly pastel by the sea fantasy, or especially the copious amounts of blood throughout, only add to the horrific tone. The repeated motif of distorted reflections emphasizes the madness that drives the plot. And all of it is just stylized enough to fit the folk legend quality of Sweeney's story. Searching for answers, Sweeney goes back to his old apartment, where his former downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Lovett, is still about doing anything but brisk business in her pie shop.
A customer. What? What's your rush? What's your hurry? You gave me such a fright, I thought you was the ghost of a minute. Can't you sit? Sit you down. Sit!
Right, you all knew this was coming, so let me explain my issues with Helena Bonham Carter in this movie. I get what she's doing with the character, playing her as more broken and desperate than outright malicious, and truth be told, this does suit her fragile-sounding vocals. My problem is, I don't think it's a good direction to take the character. After Judge Turpin, who started the whole mess by macking on Sweeney's wife, Lovett is the character most responsible for Todd behaving the way he does. Which is not to say that he is blameless in the whole vengeful killing spree thing, but that Lovett's actions, driven by her selfish and unrequited desire for him, are a major factor in the tragic arc of the musical. This requires a performance with a bit more of an edge to it. I much prefer Patti LuPone's mercenary angle. Now there's a woman you could imagine serving up corpses for dinner without a second thought. Bonham Carter never seems like she has the heart or the stomach for the things Lovett does, and generally behaves more like Sweeney's abuse victim than his accomplice. Which I suppose is a valid alternate interpretation of their relationship, but one that I personally don't care for. Lovett's litany of crazy fails to send Todd bolting for the door. I've just realized there are a lot of people choosing to keep company with the obviously bonkers in this story. So Mrs. Lovett regales him with the tale of her old neighbor Benjamin Barker, who was shipped off to prison, and his wife Lucy, who was later lured into a creepy masquerade ball at Judge Turpin's house and raped in front of everybody. Damn, you usually have to be a pro sports player or Bill Cosby to get away with crap like that.
Oh! Would no one have mercy on her?
So is you. Benjamin Barker.
What a twist!
Lovett explains to Todd Nee Barker that his wife Lucy drank poison after her assault, note the wording, and their daughter Joanna is now Judge Turpin's ward, and she spends most of her days sitting at her window singing heavily symbolic songs about caged birds.
Outside the sky, waves beckoning, just beyond the bars. How can you remain staring at the rain, maddened by the stars?
Anthony just happens to be walking under Joanna's window and is immediately smitten with her. Unfortunately, Judge Turpin, Alan Rickman, how I miss you, happens to notice his immediate smittenness and invites the boy in for a little chat.
A sailor must know the ways of the world, yes? Must be practiced in the ways of the world. Would you say you're practiced, boy?
Wait a minute. Is he coming on to me?
The catamites of Greece, the harlots of India. I have them all here.
My God, he is coming on to me.
Would you like to see?
Turpin has his lackey, the Beetle, kick Anthony to the curb, but the encounter only strengthens the lad's resolve.
I'll steal you, Joanna. I'll steal you.
Joanna! Back on Sweeney's end, he's vowed revenge on Turpin and the Beetle for wronging him and his, and the first step in his plan is to re-establish himself as the supreme barber in town. To do that, he needs to show up the current supreme barber, a flamboyant snake oil salesman named Adolfo Pirelli.
'Twas Pirelli's miracle elixir, that's what did the trick, sir, true. Was it quick, sir, did it in a tick, sir, just like an elixir ought to do. How about a bottle, mister, only costs a penny guaranteed.
Wait, we're missing something again.
How about a bottle, mister? Only costs a penny guaranteed. Go ahead and place an order.
Right, we do need to address the lack of chorus singing in this movie because I do feel it lessens the score as a whole. The official reasoning is that it's too strange to have a bunch of people all expressing themselves in unison song, but apart from the fact that we already crossed that suspension of disbelief with the whole expressing oneself in music issue, the chorus parts represent a general social madness that feeds, pun not intended, on the more specific madness of Todd and Lovett. It adds an element of mob mentality, especially in God That's Good, in which the patrons at Mrs. Lovett's shop devour her wares while expressing their delight in a chaotic cacophony. Even if you don't know what they're really eating, it's very unsettling. In this film, the song feels a lot more subdued and therefore less interesting. And in this particular scene, not having the chorus turning against Pirelli's assistant Toby lessens his growing panic as he loses his audience and is finally forced to run for his boss. What is it with music theater's fascination with men's crotches anyway?
I don't care if you're a Pisces or a Taurus, but you gotta be hanging like a brontosaurus. Cause before you undress, I got a little confession. I'm looking for a man who makes a big impression. A man who can make my body rock. A man like Jack with a big beanstalk. Cause I can be your queen and you can be my king. But if you want me to swing, you gotta show me the good thing.
Sweeney accuses Pirelli of fraud and challenges him to a shaving contest, which Sweeney wins easily, mostly due to Pirelli's weakness for boasting and falsetto. The Beadle, who was judging the contest, promises to call on Sweeney's establishment, which is exactly what Sweeney wants. However, he takes his own sweet time getting around to that which Sweeney does not want. Meanwhile, Judge Turpin has been perving on Joanna to the point where he's decided to marry her, and Joanna tosses a door key to Anthony while he's lurking under her window, causing Anthony to run off to Todd with the good news.
Mr. Todd, there's a girl who needs my help. Such a sad girl, and lonely, but beautiful too, and...
Slow down, son.
Let's pause for sin number 4. Joanna and Anthony's relationship, such as it is, gets shortchanged in this movie. Like in the stage version, it's rushed and impulsive, but the stage version takes pains to emphasize that fact in their duet, Kiss Me.
Anthony!
Not only is this duet cut from the movie, it isn't really replaced with anything. Joanna and Anthony literally have no dialogue and very little screen time together until the third act. That makes their hasty romance feel more like bad plot development than the reflection on their characters it's supposed to be. Joanna in particular suffers from this alteration, but that's another matter. So Anthony tells Todd that he wants to elope with Joanna, not realizing that she's really Todd's daughter. Sweeney agrees to hide the couple in his shop until they can skip town, while secretly plotting to kill Anthony so he can keep Joanna with him. Meanwhile, Pirelli shows up and reveals that he's really a Cockney lad who used to sweep up for Todd back when he was Benjamin Barker, and he's threatening to go to the cops if Sweeney doesn't give him half of his profits from here on out.
Confused? You won't be.
Yeah, get used to this, because we'll be heading for the levels of improbable coincidence normally reserved for operas, Shakespeare, and the later Harry Potter books. Anyway, Pirelli's attempts to blackmail the already half-psychotic anti-villain go about as well as you'd expect. Elsewhere, Turpin and the Beadle walk home after a hard day of sentencing cute kids to the gallows while discussing Turpin's upcoming marriage and Joanna's inexplicable reticence to the idea. The Beadle suggests a little manscaping might make the girl more amenable and recommends Todd's services. So while Pirelli's corpse cools in a nearby chest and Mrs. Lovett takes Toby in with a bit of kindness and a lot of gin, Sweeney prepares to exact revenge on his adversary while they sing one of the most exquisite and subtly creepy duets in the Sondheim canon.
Roof of heaven, as you're living. Pretty women, sir, pretty women. Yes, pretty women, all the pretty women.
Todd, I've seen Joanna
she'd leave with me tonight.
Awkward!
Turpin stalks out in typical Alan Rickman and high dudgeon fashion, causing Sweeney to completely lose it, well, what little it he had left anyway, and decide he's going to revenge himself on the whole opposition-damned human race while he's at it.
They all deserve to die. Tell you why, Mrs. Lovitz, tell you why.
I really enjoy what they've done with Epiphany here. The way Mrs. Lovett is both freaked out and kind of turned on by Todd's crazy is the one thing I like about Bonham Carter's performance. And the idea of Todd imagining himself stalking through a street full of potential victims is a good way to translate a moment that, on stage, is played to the audience. It makes for one of the most effective scenes in the movie, and it's capped off by probably the best underreaction one-liner ever.
That's all very well, but what are we going to do about him?
Alas, it's followed up by sin number 5, A Little Priest, in which Lovett pitches the idea of getting rid of Pirelli and all future corpses by jumping on the Soylent Green bandwagon.
What is that?
It's priest, have a little priest.
Is it really good?
So it's too good, at least. Then again, they don't commit sins of the flesh, so it's pretty fresh.
This song is black comedy at its finest. Here we have our two main characters plotting wholesale murder and cannibalism, and they're so delighted by the idea that they entertain each other with a series of increasingly wonderful, awful puns. It's a song that needs to be performed with a certain amount of relish, and Depp and Bonham Carter don't bring the energy they should. They spend most of this wild, manic waltz staring out the window, which brings the energy down, especially from Bonham Carter, who really needs a lot less desperate and a lot more manic to pull this particular song off. Come on, woman, you need to go all Bellatrix Lestrange on this number. Todd rigs up his barber chair to dump fresh corpses in Mrs. Lovett's bakehouse, a nice addition to the original script in which he got the fancy new chair via mail order. Where do you even buy something like that? Sharper Image? Meanwhile, Turpin has Joanna spirited off to some undisclosed location, and we get a montage where Anthony wanders around aimlessly looking for her, a dramatically significant beggar woman mutters crazy-sounding yet disturbingly accurate rants at Mrs. Lovett's kitchen, while Sweeney calmly butchers customers and fantasizes about killing his daughter. No, really, pay attention to the lyrics, that's what's going on here.
Goodbye, Joanna. You're gone and yet you're mine. I'm fine, Joanna.
Lovett's new meat pies are a big success, and she's dreaming about retiring to the seaside with her partner in crime, who is so broody right now that he can't even cheer up for a fantasy sequence.
A seaside wedding could be devised, me rumple bedding legitimised, me eyelids a flutter, all turn into butter, the moment I mutter, I do.
Meanwhile, Anthony discovers Joanna locked away in an insane asylum, and since he still hasn't caught on to Todd's crazy, he goes back to the barbershop with the news. Keep up, because here's where things start getting operatic again. Todd, with his boundless knowledge of all things hair-related, explains that lunatic asylums supply wig makers with human hair and devises a plan for Anthony to rescue her by posing as a perruquier in search of lovely blonde locks. But then Sweeney writes to Turpin revealing the whole plan in order to lure the judge back to his shop. Meanwhile, Toby is starting to get freaked out by Sweeney and tries to warn Mrs. Lovett, for whom he's developed whatever the inverse of Florence Nightingale syndrome is. Realizing the boy has become too much of a liability, Lovett locks Toby in the bakehouse until Sweeney can dispose of him, which means Toby gets to poke around down there enough to figure out what the secret ingredient is. With me so far? Good. Then let's go with Anthony as he rescues Joanna from the typically creepy asylum owner.
Now, I leave you to the mercy of your children.
And let's discuss sin number 6, because this scene plays out rather differently in the stage version.
Stop, Mr. Fogg, or I'll fire!
Fire, and I will stop!
I cannot shoot!
You're mad to drop your pistol!
I miss this particular bit of badass from Joanna because she's not necessarily the frail ingenue she appears to be. There is a definite dark side to her character, and it's anybody's guess how much of her relationship with Anthony is genuine attraction to him, and how much is desperate grasping at any attempt to get away from her pervy guardian. This change makes her seem less resourceful, as does another alteration where Sweeney comes upon the girl who's disguised as a sailor in his shop and nearly kills her. In the stage version, she escapes while Sweeney is distracted by Mrs. Lovett screaming, but in the movie...
Forget my face.
This not only lessens Joanna's character, but Todd's as well. It makes no sense for him to go on this increasingly unhinged killing spree and then just say, whatever, I'll let this witness to my crimes live, I guess. Sweeney and Lovett head downstairs to deal with Toby, but get sidetracked when the Beetle pops up investigating inquiries on the stench from Mrs. Lovett's bake oven, requiring Todd to sidetrack him upstairs long enough to kill him, which means Toby gets a nice view of the Beetle's corpse as it comes down the chute. Resourceful and extremely freaked out lad that he is, he eludes his would-be killers by escaping into the sewers. Meanwhile, the dramatically significant beggar woman wanders into Todd's parlor just as he comes upstairs to prepare for the judge's arrival.
Don't I know you, mister?
Mr. Todd?
I like how they do the beggar woman's death, with a curtain of blood running down her neck as the orchestra thunders away. Even if you don't know what really just happened, it's a visually arresting image. In a similar vein, pun still not intended, Turpin's eventual demise is also well done, with an added violent punch that makes it stand out from the rest of the murder in the film.
Benjamin Barker!
As a bonus, this also gives us the excellent visual of Sweeney literally soaked in blood for the movie's finale, where he finally gets a good look at the woman he just killed.
Don't I know you? Jeez.
See, Mrs. Lovett, in a bit of verbal trickery, told Sweeney that Lucy drank poison, but not that she survived the suicide attempt and wound up all cuckoo bird. And her, "I was only thinking of you, really, because I love you more than she ever could" rant does not go over well with Sweeney at all.
Life is for the alive, my dear, so let's keep living it, just keep living it, really living it!
So now nearly everybody's dead, except for Joanna and Anthony, who the movie just kind of forgets about, meaning that it's up to Toby to complete the musical's final grim tableau. And it's a beautifully gruesome one at that. In fact, Joanna's missed moments of awesome notwithstanding, this final sequence is excellently done. I don't care if I've done one already, that deserves another saving grace. Sweeney Todd is one of my all-time favorite musicals, and yeah, the movie adaptation does fall short on several counts. So why doesn't it piss me off the way, say, Phantom or Chorus Line do? I think because it also gets a lot right. Specifically, the themes of social hypocrisy, the dehumanizing effects of the Industrial Revolution, and the self-destructive nature of obsession. The staging of the songs is uneven, but when it works, it's remarkably effective, and Sondheim's score is as magnificent and haunting as ever. The movie may be only half as awesome as the stage version, but that's still plenty of awesome to carry a film. And there's multiple stage recordings available if you want the whole experience, including the Hal Prince-directed original production, so I really don't feel cheated by the existence of this one. So that's where I stand. Happy now? Well, to hear with you guys. You wanted me to have my say, and I said it. Tell the truth, it was quite refreshing to judge a movie that didn't make me want to pull my horns out in frustration. At least it wasn't another lame disco musical, or some badly animated Disney knock- Why do I keep doing this to myself?